Let's get that going.
It is. You're sharing, Scott.
Oh, it is. Okay, good. Well, I'm looking at a camera beyond. I'm looking at my own video. So, all right. So, hey, everybody. Scott Davis, one of our senior AEC technical specialists, Autodesk. I just want to take a moment to welcome all of you guys in. We're up to 93 presenters and 93 attendees. Man, tongue-tied today already. Anyway, thanks for coming in. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to come join us. This is that time of year. This is the What's New in Revit 2021 presentation for the LA Revit Users Group. I've got a couple other guys you've already been introduced to by Jay a little bit on the line with us today as well. One of them, many of you guys already know, Brian the Beard Mackey. He just picked up that nickname recently. You can probably tell why by his video there. Brian, how long are you going to let that thing go?
Well, my original thought was, I last trimmed it at RTC North America, so I'm going to probably cut it off at RTC North America again.
All right. So I'll get into some further introductions here on each of these guys in a minute. And we also have Scott Buchanan on the line as well. So Scott's going to take care, the other Scott, Buchanan's going to take care of our MEP portion today, and Brian Mackey is going to take care of our structural part. You'll see on that title slide there, I labeled him as the structural guru by marriage, right? Because it's actually his wife that's the structural engineer, the SC, and he's just picked all of this up by osmosis, I guess. So
I'm just a structure geek, so.
Yeah, you are. All right, so let's jump into this and get going. And again, a little bit about us. We have this cool new thing. If you guys want, you can actually scan these QR codes. Mine goes to a LinkedIn profile. A little bit about me. I live in the Los Angeles area, Chino, for people that know Southern California. Been 13 years at Autodesk now, right? So March of 2007 is when I joined. I spent 12 years in practice. I am now a recovering architect. I don't have to deal with RFIs or submittals or any of that good stuff anymore. So recovering there. And I was the very first day one Revit user, the very first day it ever became available. Thanks to Jim Balding, JB, many of you guys know as well. I was able to learn about Revit pre-release and jump in and start using it the very first day it came out. I ran my own user group when I was a civilian, so to speak. When I wasn't on the Autodesk side, I started the Inland Empire user group, Rugi, which is now Boogie, right, or Buggy. So it's the BIM user group, Inland Empire. And I've been a speaker at AU. I've been a speaker at Built and many other conferences. And just something I like to do in my spare time. Love to go do a little boating. We've got a boat, go out to Lake Havasu a lot. Next up, we've got Brian Mackey, Denver area. Actually, the city itself is Westminster for people that know that area. He's also known as a Revit Geek. And in fact, that's his Twitter handle as well. So at the Revit Geek. Mine is at Scott D. Davis if you want to do any tweeting while we're presenting here today. Brian is the host of something he created called Revit Radio, and it actually took a little hiatus for a while. Got reintroduced yesterday, right, Brian? So first episode again.
Yeah, 55 users show up and ask questions. It was pretty enjoyable to have.
Very good. He's also he's involved in the Built conferences. He's always a speaker there. He's either volunteer or he's been voluntold. His wife is a speaker manager for the North American event, so he kind of has to get involved with Built because she makes him, I think, at this point. He also has his own user group. He's a committee member of the Rhombus. That's the Rocky Mountain Building Information Society group in the Denver proper area, and they move that around. Sometimes it's actually at our office over in Denver, right downtown. Sometimes you guys do it out in Boulder as well. It moves around a little bit, right, Brian?
It moves around. We try to stick with the Denver area because we get the most attendees, but it does move around.
Yeah, cool. And QR code there takes you to Brian's Twitter page. All right, so I'll give you guys a second if you want to scan that and get some more info from Brian. And then last but not least, we've got Scott Buchanan. Scott joined Autodesk just about a year ago, a little more than a year ago now, right, Scott?
It's almost my anniversary. It just passed my 1-year anniversary.
All right, very good. So came from a long history with another different reseller that their area focus. Well, they're a really large reseller, but they had a lot of focus out in the Midwest. He lives in near Indianapolis. I just put the city on there, Greenwood. If anybody knows that Indianapolis area is actually your city, but usually we just say the big city names. A lot of expertise in MEP and MEP focused stuff. Water treatment plant design for 6 years, an MEP plant solution expert for 14 years. You got a lot of really good experience there. And then, in your spare time, youth sport fanatic, right? And you put 2014, so I'm guessing that's ongoing.
Yeah. I had hair when I started dealing with youth sports refs, so you can see what's going on.
That's
now.
What happens. And there's his QR code if you want to get to his LinkedIn profile as well. He's actually got a cool idea he told me about today. So when he's at events, he has an Apple Watch, throws that QR code on an Apple Watch, and rather than handing out business cards, you walk over, he holds out his hand with the watch, you scan it, and bam, you've got his contact info right to LinkedIn, which is, I thought it was a pretty cool idea. So let's jump into why you guys are all here today. We're up to 95 people online, which is awesome. So again, thanks everybody for coming in our trying times here. It's a little crazy. You know, I'm in Southern California, and I think this holds true for most of California, if not the US. I think we're all completely out of toilet paper at this point. But this virus is making us do these things virtually, right? Rather than being live. Normally when I do the LA user group, I'll go do Scrug. Later on, I've got the Big BIM barbecue, which is, well, it can't be a barbecue virtually, but the Big BIM event, which is our San Diego group, happening as well. But normally I like to go do those live, obviously change a venue this year. So I'm glad for people like Titan AC to actually let us use their GoToMeeting account that can actually host up to 500 people, right? So they got a big GoToMeeting account, which is great. So thanks to Titan AEC for doing that for us and letting us use their webinar series. So Revit 2021, I've purposely blurred out this slide because I don't want to give it all away right up front, but I wanted to use it as a little bit of a placeholder for what we're going to be going over here today. So I'm going to go over the platform features, which is when we talk platform, these are tools that could be really good for anybody, whether you're a structural engineer, in any of the MEP trades, or even if you're maybe getting into P&ID modeling, right? You're doing some more plant stuff. So there actually are some tools for P&ID that we'll talk a little bit about more. Scott's going to chat about those. And there's even a new category for infrastructure, right? So we'll chat about that a little bit more as a Revit category. So I'm going to do platform, then I'm going to switch over to architecture. Then Brian's going to take over, do structure, and then we're going to wrap up with MEP and then wrap up our events. In all, we talked, we did something similar last night. It went about an hour and a half. And so now that we're getting started with this, actually let me get my timer started so I can keep track of where I'm at. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking and start that. All right, so let's get into it. So the platform stuff that we're going to talk about first. Oh, you know, one more thing here, in case anybody didn't recognize. Oh, it's on this side. There we go. I went old school today. We got the old original Revit logo we're on. So that's changed a little over time too.
That's the logo I use for my Twitter handle too, so.
Nice. All right, so platform stuff. So here's one that really the work on this started last year in 2020 and has improved in 2021. So last year, 2020, we started the ability to actually insert PDFs into your views and your sheets and things like that inside of Revit. Well, obviously, if you have a file and you've got a lot of PDFs and you're using 600 DPI, 30 by 42 PDFs, and you're trying to stick those in sheets, the more of those you put in there, obviously, it was doing a lot with file size and things like that. Just a lot of graphic information as an image file to bring in. So now this year we're introducing linking, but it's linking both for images and for PDFs. So you can see over here, Manage Links dialog box. You've got a PDF tab now and an images tab. And you can link these things from really any source. If you've got an image file or a PDF that's local, you can grab it from your local drive. But you can also link it from a BIM 360 page. So if you guys are using BIM 360 Design or BIM 360 Document Management, you can actually store those image files or those PDFs there and link them through the cloud. So everybody's using the exact same version of those documents all the time. You also see oh my God, the name just escaped me, a nondescript, what do they call this, where you're actually not naming a drive letter, you're just going // a relative path, I guess I'm trying to say, right? There it is, it's right there. So a relative path linking, etc. Obviously, this is going to help with being able to have those PDFs linked in, those image files linked in, and then not do so much with file size and file bloat because they're just referencing in from an outside source. So great new advancement there. For those that used it in 2020, remember that PDFs, if they were vectorized in the first place, you can actually enable snaps. That means you can take a vectorized PDF, stick it in a drawing, and start snapping to it, drawing walls, drawing lines, doing other things, measuring off of it by actually using those snap points inside of the PDF. So pretty cool technology there for us. Something that probably doesn't affect us here much in North America, but is actually a really, really welcome feature for anybody that might be working on projects through the European area. So we've actually now finally have a European data center up and online. This is for BIM 360, right? So anything that's running BIM 360 Design or Document Management. In the past, the only server we were using, so we use Amazon Web Services for all of this stuff. BIM 360 stuff. And the Amazon data center we were using was actually here. It was actually in Virginia. And so if you were in Europe or anywhere else in the world and you were hosting data in the BIM 360 site, it was actually being hosted here inside the United States. So now we've opened up this EU server, and you get the choice when you actually get into an account, which one do you want to go into? Do you want to use the US server? Do you want to use the EU server? Obviously, there's a lot of territory rights and things like that going on. Some customers said that they had to have their data in Europe in order to use the service like BIM 360 Design. So new welcome feature there for sure. All right, so the Revit home screen itself has changed again a little bit. This is when you very first start Revit and get into it. And it really deals with how you're going to be navigating to get into projects. And so here's a little screenshot, and I'm going to open this up into a bigger view here in just a moment. But it's really about separating out between recent files and the BIM 360 area and giving you a much easier way to search. Just like if you're inside of BIM 360 in the web page and you have that drop-down list at the top where you can actually start typing in some characters, the name of the project that you're in, it starts to filter that list out for you very quickly, and then you can go right to the project that you're ready to go into. So let's take a little bit closer look at this, blow it up a little bit. Here's the differentiator here. If you go to recent files, obviously this kind of main window changes and shows you your recent files, or you can click the tab, so to speak, go into BIM 360. Now you're looking at your BIM 360 projects. You do have this drop-down list at the top for both your accounts and your projects with a search box where you can search through these things. It makes it really easy to do. And we provided a link directly inside of Revit that takes you directly into BIM 360. So no more having to go launch a browser, then type in a URL, or go to a shortcut or a favorite. Those are all readily accessible right inside of Revit for you now as well. And then the last thing is just some easy access down to the help files, some of the online help, the what's new, which went live today. You know, that's one of the big points about doing this for you guys here in North America. You're actually, this user group is the first one that I presented to. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of things coming out today, but everything in Revit 2021 went live at some point today. I don't know exactly what time they flipped the switch, but now you should be able to go and get downloads. Your Autodesk desktop app should be notifying you that there's new versions available. The 2021 help file should be live, and I've seen a lot of bloggers and posts and things going on today all around Revit 2021. So that online help will take you to the 2021 page. Also, when you first get Revit 2021 downloaded and install it, as you're going through the initial setup, the one thing it's going to actually ask you first is a few questions if you want. And you can dismiss out of this, but if you want Revit to help you set up a customized workspace for you, rather than just installing Revit and having every single tab turned on for all the disciplines, which you can still do, it's actually going to ask you, what do you like to work in? Are you an architect? Do you like to work in infrastructure? That's one of our new categories I was talking about. What's your job role? And then what it's going to do is it's automatically then going to set up Revit, particularly for that, what you select on that. So in the case I turn architecture on and infrastructure, let's say it's going to have the architecture tab and the infrastructure tab turned on by default. Nothing says that that's permanent. Obviously, you can go back in and change those at any time. The one thing it's not doing yet, and I'm sure that development is working towards this at some point, is to then be able to save those as a user profile, right? So if you logged in, you could actually say, I want to save a profile called architecture because we're a multidisciplinary firm. And then I have another profile that's called MEP, and just easily switch those profiles, and it would switch the user interface around for you. But at least get you a little bit more of the way there upon install for you.
Hey, Scott?
All right. Yes.
Real quick, so is that just so they can track all of our movements rather than giving us full control or full access to all that data? Sorry, continue.
I'm not sure what I'm assuming by you mean by they. I think maybe I know who you're talking about, but that's all right. No, it's not out there for us to track all of that. All right, so this one's actually really big for anybody that's ever had to work on just monstrous schedules, right? And so this goes back to my own experience of being a project manager back when I was in practice, of actually printing out 30 by 42 drawings and having them on the desk next to me and having a highlighter and trying to go from sheet view, real sheets to the computer screen and trying to understand what row I happen to be on as I was trying to, go through a door schedule or window schedule. And so now, just like Excel spreadsheets, one of the schedule properties is that we can actually tell it to stripe the rows, and we can tell it which colors do we want them to be. So we actually can choose the alternating color pattern. In this case, they're showing it with green and blue, or a greenish color and a bluish color. But there's also a new feature here, which also says show stripes on the sheet. So let's go ahead and play a quick video. Hopefully this plays smoothly for you. We've had a little bit in warm-ups today, a little bit of technical difficulty with some of our videos, but what we're going through right now is just showing you a view. It's actually in German. You can see in the tab up there at the top, but a long scheduled list. On the right, we're looking at that same schedule on a sheet. And this is where your eyes would probably go crazy without being able to have this striping of trying to do that. So we're going to go ahead and say, first and foremost, show the stripes on the sheet. And then we're going to go ahead and pick some of our colors. We're going to pick our first color here. In this case, is this kind of pinkish color. We're not going to pick a second row, and then bam, in just a second, then the schedule view and the sheet view both update with those stripes. And if you don't want to see it on the sheet, of course, you could uncheck that, and then it's going to go away in the sheet and still show it to you in the schedule view as well. So just a much easier way of being able to understand schedules, and especially when you have something like that's on the right, which is a full page, 30 by 42 of one giant door schedule or window schedule, and you're trying to make your way around that. Should make it much easier for you guys as well. All right, so there are some new categories this year, right? So there's, you guys that have been in Revit for quite some time know this already. There's always been architecture, structure, mechanical, electrical, piping. There's a brand new category this year, right? That's called the infrastructure category. So maybe that roads category that's actually in Revit will maybe someday become something. I don't think we did anything with it yet, but for those that have used Revit for a long time know that there's been a category called roads for quite some time. But this new infrastructure stuff is actually more in line with what we're doing around bridge design. So Revit's become a very powerful bridge design tool, especially when coupled with something like InfraWorks to do some pre-planning. You can actually lay out a bridge in InfraWorks, and there's a workflow to take that information from InfraWorks, bring it right into Revit, and then start doing your detailing, doing some rebar and some other concrete work. And actually, Scott's going to show you some of the new rebar tools here we have in a little bit. Along with that comes a whole bunch. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, last month when Marcelo was in doing some of his work, actually in the Rhino Inside Revit presentation he gave us, he actually used the roads category.
Oh, did he? All right.
Yeah.
I'll have to talk to Marcelo and see what he did with it.
Getting geometry, and he made roads. And in Revit, they were roads. It was great. So
nice.
Just wanted
Good to know
that.
Yeah, I may have to go back and, did you record that session? I may have to go back and watch it and see what he did.
Yeah, and we're going to repost it. I know Shovit posted it for us, and I'm just rounding up the YouTube channel, which is LA Rug now has a YouTube. Well, we've had one for years, but it's empty and it's pristine. So we're going to, once we put these two videos up, you'll know about it.
Okay, sounds great. Hey, quick reminder too, as you were chatting about that, I looked over at the chat panel. You guys are out there. We're using that for Q&A. So if you do have some questions along the way, we've got Jay, Shovit, we've got some others that are on the line. In fact, Scott and Brian, as they're not speaking, can even start answering some of the questions. So if you have something, go ahead and type it in that chat panel over there. And if we can get it answered, we will. If we can talk about it live, if we get a chance, we'll pick some of those questions out and talk about them live as well. So make sure you guys do that. Couple other things here on this slide before I move on. A whole bunch of new categories. There's 26 for modeled elements and 20 new ones for annotation elements around bridge categories and infrastructure design. And probably the biggest thing on this slide is actually this, that we've actually added US Survey Foot as a unit, which helps with that tie-in between Civil 3D and the people that are working in US Survey Feet and Revit to actually have that be able to match now. So working in US Survey Feet and Civil 3D, import that in, you can actually set that unit inside of Revit to the same category now as well. All right, Dynamo, right? So Dynamo, not that it's new to 2021, what's new to 2021 is the fact that it's Dynamo 2.5. And so in 2020, it was Dynamo, 2.1, if I remember correctly. But what we've done is we've actually made a install of Dynamo mandatory for that release of Revit, meaning we've coupled Dynamo 2.5 to Revit 2021. In the past, before we were doing this, you could go out and really grab a build of Dynamo and install it on top of whatever version of Revit you were working in. So in an office or in your teams, you might have somebody that was working in Dynamo 1.2 and somebody else that was in 2.5. And there was that incompatibility thing going on. So with this, with actually setting the version for you inside of Revit, depending on the release, and when we released Revit 2021.1 and then 0.2 and maybe 0.3 later on this year, depending on where Dynamo's at, those could also get an update in their point description of Dynamo. So we're tying it to the release, making it much more stable, making it much more easy for you guys as users to understand that, hey, anybody in 2021 is all using the same Dynamo build, install, et cetera, as you're using that. So Some other really great things here, like, being able to filter through some of the stuff for internal application dependencies. So a lot of great new tools inside of Dynamo. In fact, on the next slide, we talk about 10 new commonly requested nodes that are now built into the Dynamo that gets installed out of the box with Revit. And so some of these are things like, are elements joined? There's one down here. What's the pinned status of an object? So what these nodes are basically all access to Revit's API through Dynamo, right? So we've added a whole bunch of new functions. Some of these functions were at some point created by other users. This is an open source community, and they were available through different packages. We've actually made sure that we've now included those right out of the box because there were a lot of nodes that people really needed. In fact, I've got a list here of those 10 things. And obviously, when you look at the recording, or we can make a screenshot of this, but you'll have the links as well of where on GitHub you can go out to actually get these particular nodes if you, or get more information about them as well. So again, Dynamo being an open source tool, not a Revit tool, but open source. You find all their information on dynamobim.org. A lot of the packages are out on GitHub. And the way that Autodesk deals with Dynamo is we're making sure that in our APIs, like the Revit API in particular, is working well with what's being done in Dynamo. And that's our focus, is making sure that our APIs and our tool sets are working well with what's going in Dynamo. But again, Dynamo is not a Revit product. It's an open source tool that's out there and available. All right. So, yes, sir.
So what I'll do is after this, in the next day or two, talk with you and get any of that information, that document itself, any of the links. Because what I can do in the video description is place all those links, so people, when they're watching this in the future off the YouTube, then they can just go to the comment or the description and see all those links, anything you want to share, the what's new, etc.
Okay. Sounds great. All right, so this is actually turning out to be, I think, as I read some blog posts today and I got some reaction from the Australians last night, probably some people's favorite new thing. Brian shaking his head, right? So this is a new tool that allows you to enable view filters in the view. So if you go and open Revit 2020 and go to Visibility Graphics Override, you do not have this column. You only have this visibility column, which meant that if you had a filter called Foundations, you could just turn the visibility of it on and off, which actually turned off the objects, right? Because they're no longer visible. But now this is saying basically enable the filter, color the foundations blue, let's say. Now in this, you can actually just go into Visibility Graphics Override for a single view and uncheck one filter at a time, hit apply, and see it only in that view rather than having to go all the way out to the view filter and basically disassociating with that view just to make it change. So this is a highly sought after feature, and I think it's going to be something that people really, really appreciate. It's a quick video to show, I think I took the video out. In fact, you know what? Oh, darn it. Now I hit escape and I didn't want to do that. Let's go back here. Let me play it from this slide. And that's where we just were. There we are. Let me tab over because I have this in a Revit 2021 session and we can show it to you briefly. We're going to come back to that view there in just a second. That's something we're going to show you in a little bit here. Oh, I know where I want to go. I want to go into a floor plan view. And in this floor plan view, you're going to see that there's a view filter that's basically being set to say that anything that's been tagged as an interior element, like these walls, this door, are going to be colored in red. So if I go to Visibility Graphics here, bring up that dialog box, you'll notice under filters now I have that new column enable filter, right? So in the past, this is what you could do. You could turn off visibility. If I apply that, watch these objects actually go away, right? So it's going to take us just a second to catch up in my view here. Do be aware that, sometimes GoToMeeting and Revit don't get along the best. We're using a GoToWebinar today, and it seems to suck a lot of resources and slow things down a little bit, but seems to be working okay at this point. So there's visibility off, right? It turned off all the objects, but what if I just want to get rid of that filter, maybe temporarily, right? I just want to see the walls or the objects with their kind of normal color, the normal object styles applied to them. So I'm going to just turn that filter off, visibility on. That's what it looks like without the filter. So now you have that ability to go in and do this directly inside of a view through the Visibility Graphics dialog box. So feedback so far, that's an awesome welcome addition to what we're doing. All right, back into the slide deck. This one is one that's one of the things that's like, man, why did it take so long? And it's one of the things that's been annoying in Revit for maybe quite some time. It's the fact that some tags did not rotate with their components. So things like a furniture tag, a lighting fixture tag. This table, if it was more orthogonal, or it was rotated, the tag would still be, you know, either 90 degrees horizontal or vertical, right? There was no in between. There was no rotating that tag with those elements. So now we've got a brand new behavior in many of our tags that says rotate with component. So what you're gonna have to do is it's off by default. If you bring these things up, you'll have to go edit that tag, basically turn this thing on in the properties in the family editor, then reload them into your project, and then they'll align. So we can take a quick look at that. I've got a quick video to show this. This video gets a little bit pixely from time to time, but maybe it's all right. So there's that furniture tag. We're actually just going to go edit that tag. So now we're in the family editor. We're going to go to the properties. We're going to turn on rotate with components. And then we're going to basically save and load this right back in and override those existing parameters. And bam, now you see that that tag's actually aligned with that sofa. If I rotate the sofa, that tag's going to go with it as well. Obviously helping you to clean up your drawings, make things look a lot more presentable, make them look a lot nicer than they do. There's the lighting fixtures doing the same thing. So again, another one of those little small things, but it's, you know, definitely something that people are really appreciating that has finally gotten done, being able to have those tags and have them rotate with their families that they're associated with. Oops, escape, back up. Darn it, what was that? Oh my gosh, sorry guys, I just really jacked that up. Okay, let me go back over here. Oh, darn it, sorry. Where was I? Somehow I ended up way down in the PowerPoint. All right, we're gonna start right here. All right, this is actually a really great new tool. So everybody ready to go rebuild some of their families, because that's what's gonna happen. Brian's excited. That's what's gonna happen with this particular new feature. So this is actually really good. So the void cut family geometry type is now available as an instance, a type, and an instance parameter, right? So basically now you can associate voids. So in this little screen right here, it actually is a void. You can assign it to a parameter. In this case, it's a yes, no parameter. Does it cut geometry or not? And then associate it with a type. So if you switch from one family type to another, it can have it turn that void on or turn it off, right? Really, really welcome addition. The way that people were tackling this in the past was actually to create voids, put parameters on them, and actually move them completely out of the way of the object, right? So if you switch to family type, it would take this void and kind of shove it off into space. And if you wanted to cut, it would move those parameters back up and it would actually interfere with that object and then cut. Now we can do that directly inside the family editor using voids and controlling them with parameters. So on to this next video. This is going to show us kind of the old behavior and the new behavior. So here's this windowsill. In this particular case, you know, you could control the visibility of the forms and you could associate them with type parameters. So we're going to say that this is a concrete cast sill, right, with a drip edge. And we're going to zoom in a little bit tighter here in just a second. We're going to focus on this little drip edge in this concrete piece. Now what we can do is actually take that void form and associate it with a yes, no parameter. Tell it to cut geometry and then associate it with that parameter, drip edge. And then the family type, we can say, you know, family, this one is with drip edge and this other family type is without drip edge, right? And so now when I switch back and forth between those two types and apply that, the void doesn't cut any longer, or now it does cut, right? So huge welcome addition. You know, this is going to help with this is just one little example, this kind of windowsill detail here, but I'm sure you guys are going to come up with a whole bunch of creative ways of how you're going to make that available and use that in your families that you guys have yourselves. All right. So a couple of the other little things, right, that we've done in the platform this year. One of them is that we've made this line style naming much more consistent. The first thing we did is that we took all of the hard-coded Revit out-of-the-box line styles and we made sure that each one of them was named the same way, meaning they have the brackets or these little carets, the less than, greater than signs on each end. But I think probably the bigger improvement is that we put them at the bottom of the list, right? So your own line styles are now always at the top. All of the Revit ones, the out-of-the-box ones, are always at the bottom of the list so that they're not kind of cluttering up your view, so to speak. So I think that's going to be a really welcome addition. The second thing that's kind of a small thing, but it could be a really, yes, oh, was there a question?
Regarding the line types.
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you let us get rid of all of them?
There's some
lines, right? The word medium lines, thin lines, thick lines is the fucking stupidest thing in the world. What does that mean?
Sure it is. Yeah.
So why can't we delete them all?
because it's maybe a long-winded response, and I don't want to get hugely into it today, but the thing that's actually testing Revit, our regression farm that we actually test Revit against itself, every new bit of code that goes into Revit, every hour of every day, started back at Revit 1.0 when those categories were there. And that regression farm still uses some of those tests because there were bugs back in the day that existed with those particular line types. And we still have to test against them today. If we remove them, basically our regression farm that's testing Revit's stability, its bug performance, et cetera, all gets out of whack. So there are some things like single family flush door as a door family is kind of a standardized door. It's part of the regression farm testing and has to be there. Like people say, well, I never use the out of the box single family flush door. Why do you guys keep installing it? Well, it's just one of those things that's kind of there because of our testing environment that we have to make sure that Revit's very stable. So we get it. Wish we could make them go away.
Can I add to that too? Because there are some certain things in Revit that use those line styles that you don't know about. Like if you're doing a composite metal deck slab, the dash lines and the little deck lines, they use those line styles. So if you deleted those, you would lose line styles to some of the things that are built into Revit. So yes, the definition of medium lines, whatever, it's pretty crappy wording, but the fact that they are pre-built into a lot of the built-in tools inside of there, like the hidden and the hidden lines, those are built into your automatically dash lines, etc. Same thing with medium lines and thin lines. Those are actually built into a whole bunch of different categories of things that happen behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah. Lazy. I don't know. Maybe it's a little lazy programming, just not wanting to get to it. There are other ways that those things can be dealt with. They don't have to be there just because they've been there since 1842. But let's move on.
Yeah. All right. So a couple other things here that I think, like I said, this could be big. So this idea that it's called Get Autodesk Content. So what this is essentially now when you install Revit, we have localized content for families for all over the world. Obviously, if you're here in North America, most of the time you're going to go get the North American Imperial Content Library, the North American Metric Content Library, and you can actually have those things installed by default, right? But you don't have to have those things installed by default anymore. We're going to install by default all the necessary kind of out-of-the-box templates that needs Revit to run. Some of the families that are kind of necessary, so to speak, as Brian just said. But this new button basically says you don't have to go get this massive thing of content. I think the download for the North American Imperial is like 4 gigs worth of data now, and most people don't use that. You have your own doors, windows, furniture, et cetera, and so you don't need that out of the box content. So what we've done is actually enable that now so that you can go get it yourself, right? So from within Revit, after you dismiss your save dialog box, under the Insert tab near Load from Library, you're going to get a new button that says Get Autodesk Content. This basically takes you out to a web page. It's part of the Autodesk Knowledge Network. And it got updated because when I did this last night, it actually went to 2020. So this is going to go to the 2021 site now. So things are working as planned. Oh, maybe not. It's actually still pointing to 2020. They haven't updated this yet, but it will get there. And so when this loads, what this is going to show you is that not only do you have access to the North American content, but every bit of content that we make for all the Revit installs around the world. If you want Australian stuff, because you're working on a project in Australia, go get it. Canadian, Denmark, New Zealand, as I scroll through this list, on and on and on. So you can go grab, UK, you want the Great Britain stuff, you can go grab 1.26 gigs worth of content that is specific to the UK. You need Chinese simplified. You've got all of those available to you here in this content delivery system. Now, this is the first part of some things I know that we're working on. Jay asked, early on as we got people in, some of the things that we're working towards, and one is dealing with content inside of Revit in a much more productive way than we do now. So look forward to maybe some other future improvements around content and content delivery systems within Revit. All right, back to PowerPoint. And then the last on this slide, just some new sun and shadow refinements. I guess I didn't realize this, but if you were doing a project close to one of the poles, there were some issues with shadows not displaying correctly. So we fixed all of that. We actually fixed the sunrise and sunsets. If you go into the project location information dialog box, type in a location, your sunrise and sunset, your basically sunlight system is now based on that particular location that you typed in, so you don't have to set it in 2 places any longer. So nice little feature there for us. All right, let me pause for just a second. I don't see any questions in the chat window yet, so you guys are just mesmerized, I guess, at this point. Don't have any questions. But that was a list of our
there's
platforms.
actually a bunch of there are a bunch of questions. Yeah, and everybody, I get it. The audio was shit. Don't worry, I'll fix that next time if I ever play music again. Apologies. David Banyard, he's having problems getting in. He is in the, I guess, attendee list, but not as a presenter. But he's tried to fix it. His comment is just mentioning filters can be applied in very cool ways to animations now. He had wanted to add more, but maybe we can get him on before the end of this.
Yeah, Shobit, if in the background, maybe I think he just got an attendee link instead of the panelist link. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on there, but
I already sent him the link. So,
do you see Karen's question about Karen Kenzik from USC? Hi, Karen. She asked if you can get the partial content, not just all of it. Let's say you only want doors.
Yeah, so I think that right now it's a download of like what is the package for North American content, but I think that's part of this content delivery system that we're working towards somewhere down the line in the future, is that idea that, hey, I only want this, I only want just the doors, or I only want this specific door out of the box content library. I think that's, you know, some good ideas about where we're heading with some of these things around families and content.
How about the rotating tag? What does deleters? You didn't show it with any leaders on. Did deleters affect that at all?
You know, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't played around with that yet. Brian or Scott Buchanan.
You got Revit in front of you. Go to Revit. Go to Revit. No, go to Revit.
You know, I got so much stuff to cover still.
The leader makes the tag go back horizontal. It only goes rotates with, I believe, if there is without the leader. I'll check that while you're talking.
Thanks.
And presenter view, I'm only seeing chats from the internal people. Why am I not seeing everybody?
There's a tab. You don't want to go through what I went through before. It's there. Yeah. You may have to go into the settings and
there's a questions pull down.
I'm not going to spend too much time doing. I'm poking through right now. I don't see it. So I'm sorry, guys. I don't see the question.
So Scott, on the GoToMeeting little window up at the top, it has view. Make sure the attendees, all those things are checked. If attendees is checked, down below where the little box comes up, where earlier it was just showing us presenters to each other, that's because there are two tabs. One says attendee, one says staff, and then there's another. Where is it? Polls, question, chat. Did I just close my chat window? Oh, no. Yeah?
Yeah,
I just have it buried so I can only see a few. So, yeah, there's an attendees and a staff tab on the go-to window.
Interesting. Okay. When Brian goes on, I'm going to poke through it, so I don't see it right now. All right, let's get on to some of the architecture stuff. I mentioned earlier that we are having a new reinvestment in the architecture side. First, in the amount of new hires that we're going to have out there. We're hiring right now. Currently, we've got a bunch of open requisitions for developers that want to work on the Revit architecture platform. So new reinvestment there. But I do think that the group did some really cool stuff here this year in the architecture side of the business. So let's jump into a few of these. Now my slide's not advancing. There we are. So one thing that we've been working on for quite some time is this idea around this tool is now called Generative Design for Revit. Some of you might have known this by its project, its code name. For a long time, we were calling this Project Refinery, and that's typically what happens when things are beta. They're still in their code name. And so if you had the opportunity to work in Project Refinery, it's now available to be installed in Revit. It's an add-on. It's not going to install by default, but it's easy to go get, and you can install the Generative Design for Revit, basically tool set, which is going to do a lot of things. First and foremost, it's basically using Dynamo in the background. And what generative design is all about is about doing a lot of iterations on objects very, very quickly, much more quickly than we might be able to do in a more manual way as architects and designers. So for instance, there's a few different out-of-the-box generative design scripts that you can run or studies. One of them is this idea about office workspace layout. So what this is going to do is allow you to pick a particular space, an area, then basically place a piece of furniture inside of that. In this case, it's going to be these desks down here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually set up some parameters. We're going to say what's important about these desks and how they're laid out, their overall rotation, the spacing between the rows, the average distance to an exit, the views to outside, the actual overall number of desks that are in that particular room. And then we're going to go create study. And we're going to show this to you here in just a minute in a video. What it's going to do then is going to go and iterate, make thousands of these examples and figure out all the different ways that it can do. It will populate this graph down here. And then we can use these bars to start grip editing and moving these graphs to filter out those results from thousands down to tens, and then maybe down to just a few that you feel are appropriate. And then when you get to the design you like, you can say, create those elements in Revit, and we'll literally take those things and bake them into the Revit scene. So let's go take a look at that here real quick. So this is that video I was chatting about. Oops, I think I might have to hit play on this one. There we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to do a create study. This is going to launch the generative design panel. We're going to go into the workspace layout. We're going to select that space first. Then we're going to select the piece that we want to be in there as a desk. We're going to set some of our goals here by checkboxes. These are all being run by Dynamo. Then it's going to go ahead and produce that study. Now we can go and explore these options as soon as it's done. You can see it's up to 900. There's 1,000 different choices that it made there very quickly. And we can go to these graphs. We can start reducing down the overall number of the different results that are there. We can start exploring what they look like. And when we get to the one we like, we basically say create elements in Revit, button down the lower corner. And there's all of those desks aligned to that study we just did. Last step, get rid of that kind of placeholder desk. And now we've got the results of that study. There's other ways that this can be used as well. There's another out of the box generative design study that can be done. This one is about being able to look at overall building context. So we're going to use the building massing tool study. We're going to maximize for, different outputs here. We're basically trying to figure out, there's our bounding box that says these are all of our setbacks for this particular tower. We're going to look at things like the height, how many floors, the overall dollar value assigned to each one of those floors, make some filtered results. And then we're satisfied with that. We can bake those elements right into Revit. And then that helps to facilitate our design process. So some really cool studies that are available in generative design. Again, this is all fed by Dynamo. So what I'm really looking forward to is seeing what the community does, because again, being an open source community, you guys can make your own scripts that run Dynamo that then tag into generative design, and you can come up with some really, really cool stuff for doing your own layouts. And so I'm really excited to see what you guys might do with that kind of stuff. All right, so next couple things. I'm almost to the end of the architecture before we throw it over to Brian to talk about structural.
Yes, Scott.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just before you throw it to Brian, let me know, there's a couple questions we'll get to.
Okay, perfect. So a couple more things. This is, for me, a former architect, this is probably one of my favorite new tools. This is something that is going to take the place of the old realistic view in Revit. So as you guys know, the view control bar down at the bottom of a 3D view or perspective view has hidden line, has shaded mode, had a couple different categories there. And then the very bottom one was realistic. So I wish there was a way to poll the audience here, because I would love to see a raise of hands of how many people actually used realistic view in the past. I think generally the experience was you turned it on and you waited for that scene to bake, so to speak, and it kind of rendered it. It was pixely and it got better. And then you were in a live perspective view and you went to move around, or you pre-highlighted an object and you had to wait again. And it was very slow and very clunky. So we've stripped that out entirely. This new realistic view replaces all of that entirely. It uses the new physical-based materials that we started to introduce in 2019 and 2020. So it was a reason behind introducing some of those new physical materials to this. It's at least 10 times faster, right? So when I get in and show you this in just a moment, it's pretty darn cool. It's a very good lighting quality, an automatic exposure control built in. So if you're actually walking through a scene and you go from outside to inside where there's no artificial lights, it will automatically re-expose that scene so that you're not just in the dark, so to speak, right? So let's go take a look at this, because this is actually really, really cool. So I'm going to jump back into Revit 2021. We're going to go into this view. Let me start here. So for those that don't know what model I'm in, I'm just using the Revit basic sample project today. But with that being said, I've done this on my own in this model, which is one of our data sets that we have. This is actually a building that's on Qualcomm's campus down in San Diego. This Revit file actually has 18 Revit files linked into it. Here's all the files. Complete site plan, and this building is complete fire protection, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, architectural. There's full furniture inside of it, everything. Anyway, I loaded that up on my Surface Book 2 and went into this new realistic mode and walked through it, and basically didn't have any hesitation at all. I mean, on a big giant model like that on a Surface Book, and it was actually moving around quite well. We tested that through Zoom and GoToMeeting, and it just doesn't work in that big of a model when I'm also presenting through all the video here. So I'm using the sample basic project. It moves around a little bit better, but don't let the size of this model fool you. I know this isn't a big model, but if you guys try it on your models, I'm really excited to see what you think of this tool. So right now we're just in a normal kind of hidden line mode. I'm going to go down to my graphics controls. We're going to do a couple things here. First, I want to go in and show you some of the new exposure settings that are in this dialog box. In fact, my Revit's just, because of GoToMeeting, I think it's just chugging away here. It's a little bit slow today. So when I go into the realistic mode, you'll notice that we have a new slider control for this automatic mode, right? And right now I'm not in realistic, so it's grayed out. So let's go ahead and flip this to realistic. Another thing I might want to do here, maybe I don't want to show edges. I could do the anti-aliasing, but just for sake of time, I don't want it to have to process all of that as well. I'm going to have it cast some shadows as well. I'm not going to do ambient shadows. That's, again, just for demo purposes, another thing that needs to calculate and also display through GoToMeeting, so we're not going to turn that on. You can't do sketchy lines in the realistic view, right? Because it's more kind of photoreal, so to speak. Your depth cueing also doesn't work in these views, but that's all right. But your lighting control does. So right now I'm on an exterior sun only setting. I'm going to change this to an interior artificial only and leave them as their default. We're going to go realistic, and then I'm also going to change the background a little bit. And I've picked a couple dark colors that makes kind of a nighttime-ish looking sky, just doing it very quickly. So when I apply that, what you're going to see in this scene now is that all of this stuff is going to be rendered. It's pretty darn good. I mean, I know I've seen other kind of real-time rendering engines out there that I think are, really good quality, but being inside of a design tool and being able to actually be in the scene. Now check this out. Like what I mean is this is a perspective view, and you guys know that over the last few releases, we've actually been enabling more and more perspective view editing of the tools. So basically they're all on right now. So I can highlight any one of these objects, right? Not only can I highlight them, I can work. So I can delete. So if I just delete this little end table out of here, it'll get removed from the scene. Probably pretty subtle, but the reflection in the glass changed. The shadow underneath that little dining table also changed. This gives you the ability to actually be inside of a scene and work on it and see the results update instantaneously. So if I go Control Z, undo that end table deletion there, you'll see it pop back on, watch back here in the glass and the shadow underneath it, taking a little bit longer than it normally would if I wasn't on GoToMeeting. There it goes. So it's basically re-updating the scene. Now, to go along with this, we've also introduced a new tool. Might notice that over here on this control bar, it's the new fly mode, right? So in the past, without fly mode, if you wanted to go walk around the scene, I had to get everybody's favorite tool, the steering wheel, out and click on walk, and then I could walk through the scene, right? And then this little steering wheel would follow my cursor around. So no longer. For anybody that's done any video gaming whatsoever, you just enter fly mode now. And what you do in fly mode is just like a video game. You use your left click to move your head around. And hopefully this is coming through smoothly across GoToMeeting and everything else. Then you're going to use the WASD keys on the keyboard, just like in a video game again, to walk forward, walk back, dolly, side to side, right, they call it, and be able to move around the scene. When I do this without GoToMeeting, especially in this size model, is smooth as butter. I know it's a little bit it's even choppy on my computer right now, and I'm sure it's coming through GoToMeeting a little bit choppy as well. Again, I'm really excited for you guys to go try this on your own and check this stuff out. So fully editable scene to be able to move around, change lighting, change materials, add objects, be able to work. So if I exit out of fly mode here and I go and select this little can light, this particular track light actually has a parameter in it. Oops, didn't select it. it allows me to actually change its angle of rotation. Why is it not picking this guy now? I did this just last night, and there we go. So what I want you to see is that this particular light is actually shining down here and has a little bit of a hot spot going down on the ground underneath it. And normally I can change the angle of it. For some reason, it keeps unselecting it for me. So I just did a delete instead. You notice that the one hot spot over here went away. Let me go and do delete on this particular can light as well. And you'll see that the lighting actually updates live on the fly in front of you. So if you change the color temp, the IES file for the light, and these guys have a parameter that can control the angle of the light. If you control the angle of the light, you can see something over here. Often, actually, I think that's maybe depending on time of day, that might actually be the sun way off out there in the distance in my kind of fake nighttime sky. But a really, really cool way to be able to be in a scene, editing color, material, objects, lighting controls, everything else, and have it live, updated on the fly, and then also be able to go and navigate around that scene in perspective mode and work. Probably one of my favorite new tools. Hopefully you guys like that one as well. The last thing I want to, sure.
It's kind of maybe on point with that, what you were just talking about. Tesla's asking, since the images are now links, are material mapping going to be supported? And she put in BIM 360, but I just want to know at all, but also extended in BIM 360.
Materials are something that we're working on. I don't think I haven't seen anything that they made them into the 2021 release as far as being able to do linked materials, whether they're through BIM 360 or not. But I know it's something that we're working towards. And again, I don't have any no concrete dates or releases on those kind of things. But I know it is definitely something we're working towards. In this particular release, I haven't seen anything, so I'd have to go check it out to get a verified answer for you. But I don't think so at this point. Okay. Was there any other questions? I'm way over on time, aren't I? It's all right.
Yeah, you want to. One of them is probably quick, and I tell me. Well, correct me if I'm incorrect, so I'll answer it. The question from Ashley is: will generative design be a feature, option, plugin, or usable for MEP and structural? And my answer would probably be, yeah, well, baby steps. I mean, the lighting is kind of part of the MEP, so right. The tool is. This is the first implementation. It probably has very little functionality or limited, and will grow in the next several years.
Yeah, I would second that from an standpoint. Yeah, it's easier to take building blocks and things like that and kind of shift them around and do some simulation as opposed to connected systems and those types of layouts. But it's definitely on the radar because I've been asking those questions myself.
I have seen some people use it to do some layout of just the light fixtures and or the diffusers, and then still have to manually go through and connect the ductwork. But yeah, I have seen it used from some simple things like that. But yeah, it's not going to go through the whole entire duct run for you.
How about an interesting question for some of the people? Why? And it may be a slow pitch for you. Why was survey feed added?
I'm not the civil guy. I'm not sure. You guys have that answer? Scott, Brian, any idea?
Lane?
I don't know if I'm supposed to say the answer. They're actually possibly working on internally looking at the units and changing how the units are being incorporated behind the scenes. And as they were doing that, they realized that the link with the BIM 360 and getting stuff from Civil 3D, since Civil is using the survey foot, which for those of you who don't know, takes into consideration the curvature of the Earth. They were having some issues, so that's partially why they introduced it, is to theoretically address some of those issues and potentially for future things that they're developing.
Yeah, I think it's more for laser scanning purposes as well, which is again tied to survey feet to get everything properly registered.
Yeah, it's finally giving us the right unit is the answer.
Yeah. All right, let me.
I can speak to the survey unit. I'm finally on. This is David Banyard. The survey unit.
Hey, David.
The survey unit issue can also have some effect on if you're working with exporting. So let's say that you have you're using some state plane coordinates for exporting to a VR. This may and you may have to test this yourself, but it may eliminate the floating point errors that can happen. Right now, if you use a state plane coordinate system and it's 1,000,000 miles from your actual location of your site, you'll get a floating point error if you try to export it to GLB or something like that.
Very cool. On a quick side note about just positioning and things like that, I was looking at a customer file the other day. It was having some issues with 3D views. We discovered a camera that was 200 quadrillion miles away from the model. That's like, basically outside of our solar system. This 3D camera was, we don't know how it got there or what it was doing, but if you went to click a default 3D view, suddenly your the view wouldn't register. It wouldn't do anything. The view would appear, but it'd be white, and if you felt like you were zooming in and out, but you weren't, because you were zooming in from 200 quadrillion feet, which was, I forget how many miles that was. It's 2 trillion miles in space or something like that. It was crazy, the fact that this camera somehow got placed that far out into space. But anyway.
Hey, while you have that model up, while that model is up there, the last question that came in, or a comment question, was about the different types of three-dimensional views, right? We have perspective, we have isometric. Can you do 2-point perspectives is the question?
All of our perspectives haven't changed. They're still just controlled by, creating a camera, which I don't know the exact calculation method that we do to do that. I believe it's just a standard kind of 2-point, but there's no way of controlling that. You can't say, I want to go to a different kind of perspective type at this point. Okay. Let me move on here quickly because I still want to give these guys time, and it's getting late at Scott's time. He's on Eastern time at this point, so it's getting late for him.
Let's get Scott in there next, man. Brian can stay with.
All right, let's go and zoom in on this. This is the last feature I want to show you, and this is actually pretty cool. So what these are right now is just a normal wall, right? So this is just there it goes, a standard basic 8-inch wall. But I'm going to go over to this wall, and let's just zoom in a little bit tighter. And I'm going to take this little grip right here, and I'm just going to do this to it. Let me zoom back out. Did anybody just see what I just did? No massing, no wall by face, nothing else required. I just made a slanted wall by simply grip editing the top of the wall and leaning it over. Yes, got a little golf clap from Scott Buchanan up there. We now have the ability to.
I got to interrupt, man. I got to interrupt. Awesome.
Let me continue, Jay. Let me continue, Jay, and then you can rant. Let me continue, Jay, and then you can rant. All right, so the other thing we can do is that in this particular case, all walls now have a new parameter. It's called cross-section. So you can set them to be slanted, or if I go to one of these straight walls, these are just still vertical. I could change this to being a slanted wall type instead. And then I can control the angle either by grip or by just simply typing in something. So if I want that to be a 15-degree slope, I can. So we can tilt that in. These will respond to attachments if I have these walls attached to roofs, etc. Yes, it does work on curvy stuff as well. So if I go into this particular wall style and I say I want these slanted at 10 degrees, it works on that. If I want to make a cone-shaped building, I can tab select into this cylinder down here. We can turn these into slanted walls. We can give them a projection. Maybe I go negative 10 degrees on this one, and they will tilt in or out as well. I did negative to go in, positive to go out. And they work with all different wall types, right? So if I go into this cone-shaped guy here and I switch this from being basic wall type and I want to do something that's a curtain wall system, we can do that, select maybe a storefront from the list, and now I've got, or in a moment when it recalculates, I will have a slanted storefront curtain wall system applied to a cone-shaped object, right? So finally, a tool that I think is, a really welcome addition. Is it 100% feature complete yet? Can you do all kinds of, crazy stuff with it? No, Jay, there's probably a lot of stuff that we still need to work on in this. In fact, I'll show you one of them. So if I go into this wall styles here and I go into the out of the box wall style, it has a bunch of sweeps added to it, which is this kind of brick on CMU and metal stud that's got a parapet cap and some brick sweeps embedded in it. You guys have all seen this wall style, I'm sure. One thing you'll notice is that wall joins, when you're doing slanted walls, only have the ability to butt. They don't have the ability to miter. So right now, my sweeps don't know how to wrap the corner properly. So I'd have to grip it as these and pull them out as individual wall sweeps. You know, my parapet cap in this case is not perfect. But I should also point out that this also introduces a new parameter to hosted elements like windows and doors and sweeps. So if I go into this window and place it, by default right now, this window is basically popping out of that slanted wall. So if I tab into that window, go to its properties, there's going to be a new parameter inside of the window that is actually orientation. Right now it's set to being vertical. We can set that to being slanted. And now it will basically remain coincidental with the face of the wall. So if I tilt that wall at a greater angle, the window is going to go with it, and it stays, stays in plane with that wall. So let's make this like 25 instead, and you'll see that the window goes along with it. So obviously a great new feature. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, no, put that on screen. Where'd it go?
It's on screen.
I can't wait till people put doors in and make them coincident with the wall to where they don't open.
Right, when you swing in a downward direction. Yeah, I'm sure that will happen.
Yeah.
All right.
But no, just some of the construction needs to be updated, obviously. I know they're working on it. It's just frustrating when I still can't use that damn thing for what the hell it would be built as. The top and bottom need to be able to have variation. Not
sure they do. And we also want tapered walls where both sides slant. We want the top to slant, and we want the bottom to be on the ground, and then we want the top to be parallel with the ground. Yeah, there's lots of things to do. This is the first iteration of it. There's definitely more to come for sure. All right, I am getting through this.
One last question, and you'll kick it over from Karen Kenzik regarding Dynamo. Oh, I lost the question now. Sweet. Okay, continue. Sorry, lost the question. I'll get back to it later.
All right, so Shobit, if you can go ahead and make Brian the new presenter, and we should be able to be on his screen, and Brian's going to show us around some of the new tools inside of Structure. I think I have to stop, don't I? Stop. There we go.
All right, so we're going to jump into some of the structure stuff. I will not be as long-winded as Scott, which is actually pretty odd because I'm usually a long-winded person. But so one of the new features they came out with, getting and starting to deal with a lot of this information, is really starting to get into the types of aspects of the shape codes for this. So if anybody's ever created custom rebar shapes in Revit, it's actually really great at a family editing tool. But the one problem is we were never able to take, like here in this case, the leg A and get leg A to be sticking back the other direction. We could not do that. So what actually ends up happening, and I'm just going to jump into Revit real quick, is we now have a new rotation parameter inside of the legs. Oops, I'll get back to that in a second. I was answering that question. But we now have this beautiful shape editing tool inside of here. So if I come, I don't want that. If I come into the sample structure project and I go grab this view here, which I had open before I started pulling out some of that support stuff, excuse me here for a second. Well, when I start looking at this, a lot of these tools now, and this is a terrible example, but if I grab a piece of any of my rebar sets or an individual rebar, we now have hook rotation at start and end. So I can choose to take that, and if I wanted to make that hook go the other direction, I can rotate it around 180 degrees. So we're always limited to, hey, this piece of rebar was coming in, the hook was going this direction, and that was it. That's all we could do. We now can change hook rotation at start, hook rotation at end, and start tweaking those around, which gets us back into that scenario of, hey, we can start doing these different types of bars inside of here. Maybe you need to model some standees if you're getting that type of scenario. So nice little application for us to be able to change the rotation to any rotation what we want to do on that, which is kind of, I've been using it a little bit to cheat with some of the slanted walls as well. Oops, that's what I wanted to do. And I'll hop into that and talk about that in a second. So we've had a couple of for key releases of Revit. They always worked great on straight bars as long as the line, the reinforcement was touching, it was all perfectly straight. Now we've got the capability to do it on curved bars. I will say that the curved bars must be tangent. So if the curved bars aren't actually being tangent, then the couplers still aren't going to come in and look proper the way we needed them to do. So again, just a little feature, but kind of one of those things. I think this is mostly requested out more in the European area. God dang it, but I keep doing that. European area more so than the US. So if you do have some couplers going into some of your bars and that's going to start working, then we actually have this new thing on here, and I should have Scott, I should have updated this slide here. We have what are called end treatments at start and end treatments at end. So if you are coming up to a coupler, you need to say this is going to be a welded coupler or it's going to be a threaded coupler. You have the capability to go through and just define that in your reinforcement. So that value is able to be scheduled. I believe it's be able to be tagged, but keep getting the check forgetting. So just allowing a little bit more information going into that reinforcement as we start going through and setting that up. So this was a minor little thing that they added. I think it was 2020. They added the fabric sheets. We had the fabric sheet representation. It'll show our overlapping of the sheets, etc. They now added the consistency to look with the reinforcement to be able to have our visibility states, so we can actually view that wire fabric sheets as solids as opposed to just single 2D lines, which we didn't have the capability before. I don't know why this slide has it on a vertical. I've never seen fabric sheets on a vertical reinforcement, but you do have the capability to go through and add that into those. So kind of nice little feature, and it is consistent with what's going on with reinforcement, so I kind of really like that feature as well. So I first saw this when I was playing with this in the beta, and there's a new checkbox, and you do have hook lengths, and you can go in and check override hook length. When I got into that, I didn't know, for those of you who've dealt with this, you get all of these parameters out of the box with all of the different pieces of reinforcement. As you create your reinforcement families, you get to choose which one of those are used. I was really struggling with going, okay, I unchecked this, now which value is going to come in? What I've noticed is as you start going in here, before this dialog box for override length is checked, you can actually come in and say, oh, which one's grayed out? The one that's grayed out has been assigned to hook length. So when you check that, the one that was grayed out will become a solid value, so then you can go in and start changing your value. So if we did want to make the hook length a little bit longer than the code minimum length, it'll let us do it. It will also, unfortunately, let us make it smaller than code minimum. So not sure if I like that. Just one of those things to be checking and getting into. But yeah, it will allow us to get in and play with that. And like I said, sometimes in a scenario like this, rather than going in and rotating the individual bar, what is nice with that hook rotation is if you did have hook on that, you could just rotate these side ones out if you needed to, those to be out at an angle. So it's kind of a nice little feature rather than going in and grouping your bars. It's not a group, it's a set. Removing the set from your reinforcements and then going and having individual bars and rotating it in those corners where you need it. You can actually just rotate the hook on that as well. So it's a really nice feature to be able to go in and set up and do. So precast has been reloaded. So this used to be an additional add-in to Revit. So it's now gets installed automatically when you start installing Revit. So yes, all you MEP and architectural folks, you are going to have a nice precast tab up in your ribbon. I believe this can possibly go away, as mentioned early on, with the settings when you install the software. I personally skipped that, so I got all the toolbars. I haven't found a way to turn it off otherwise, so it might be something to pay attention to if you're really going to be hating having in all this nice precast stuff. They did actually start supporting Imperial units, because since this was an add-on that came from outside of the US, it was originally Imperial units. So they've got that going on, and they've actually allowed some more modeling overrides for some of the assemblies. So we've got a little bit more flexibility on some of the assemblies to start going in and using the precast as well. So as with everything else, as we get the new Dynamo 2.5, they've added some more nodes. This is going to be more geared towards the steel connections. So there's been a lot of improvements, which I'll talk about in an upcoming slide, but they've actually added a lot of this stuff getting into some of those steel connections. So you get a lot of steel connections that they can play with. You can now start adding those steel connections, getting into the Dynamo side of things as well. So kind of really nice to get into, and I believe they even have some sample scripts for some of the Dynamo stuff for structure, not only just for the steel, but some from other like analysis and things like that they're doing as well. So I've added some more sample Dynamo scripts as you start getting into it. Now, I'm not 100% sure on this one, and I wasn't able to find an answer that from last night somebody asked, but I on the ribbon is analysis results. So you can actually see some of the analysis results. I believe this only works with robot. So I Not 100% sure on that, but I do know you can start bringing some of the analysis results inside of Revit if you're using robot structure. So you can start saying, I want to see, what are my reactions, what are my deformations, what's going on in some of this stuff as we start looking in, and you can get a visualization of that. I think this would be great for those firms that actually are using robot structural analysis, for the engineers who are in some analysis, and for them, the drafters / modelers, to be able to actually see some of that analysis inside the Revit interface for what they're familiar with. So I think it's a great little feature, again, if you're using the robot interface. So anybody has been using this at all? And I don't know if anybody's really jumped into this, and this is a tool that I'm also suggesting like a lot of architects can start looking into as well. So I think it was back 3 releases ago that Autodesk started adding these steel connections, and they were pretty basic at the beginning, but a lot of different tools would come up inside of here. And one of the biggest complaints we've had in the past is the capability to copy a connection that we've set up on one beam and column or one beam to beam joint over to other ones. We didn't have that capability, so a big new release of this is allowing us to go in and copy those connections from one beam to the next beam to the next beam, and not having to go through the whole dialog interface to set it up. So it's kind of a nice little thing to get set up. They've also added a lot of capabilities to start editing some of the plates, editing some of the contour cuts on beams, etc., going in and saying, oh, I want to change the radius of this. So a lot of features to go through and edit this. And like I said, if you haven't got into this, architects, these tools are actually pretty simple to do. So if you want to see some of those pretty gusset, you want to see some of the gusset plates, because you want to see that structure for rendering, and you're in a preliminary phase, it's a great tool to do it. Also, you can also use these tools for structural engineers. It does a better feature of coping than the coping tool. So a lot of times for me, some of these steel tools, I'll just do a generic connection which doesn't have any connection to it, just to get the coping going through. So nice little feature as you start going through and really start jumping into that, being able to edit some of those steel objects that were kind of fixed in the past with this tool, but really starting to open this up for us a little bit more. So one of the new parts of this, the structural connections, is going to be stiffeners. So there's actually a new dedicated tool just for stiffeners that we can go in and start saying, I'm going to do stiffeners. I need to add stiffeners at this point. Different snap points for selecting those stiffeners. They can be aligned more easily, copied more easily, and with another feature on the next slide, and the center lines coming in, it's making it easier to document and dimensions of those things as well. So again, another nice little feature coming in here, playing with and editing. And with all of these connection tools, what is great about all of this is if you change beam sizes, if you're going through and adjusting as you go through, as long as those structural connections haven't been, I forget the tool, the term is ungrouped or exploded, whatever that term they use in there is, as long as that doesn't happen, if you change a beam size, all the connections will start to update and reanalyze as it goes through. So it is a great little feature that's happening. They also fixed a minor feature that happened in the past. If you tried actually editing a structural connection through the type dialog, the type properties, it would actually tell you the beams are still being calculated. So there was a minor bug in that I know they fixed in this release as well. So kind of a nice little add-on that I don't believe is documented anywhere also. So they've also given us capability, ironically, one of the few things in Revit that you can only do in 3D. We're playing with some of the structural connections. So now they actually given us the capability to go through and get into some of the 3D aspects of these things as well. So now we can do it not only in the 3D view, they've added the 2D views as well. So I always thought it was odd that this is the one feature in Revit that you can only do in 3D and not do it in 2D as well. So that's been put inside of there. So we can edit things like contours, beams, steels, bolts, a whole bunch of those different tools. So another little feature they had in here is before, when we did add steel plates or a lot of the different types of things in there, there was no center line. So a lot of my clients are going and drawing a little detail line in an elevation simply so they can just dimension to it. They've now added with those steel plates, not only in like elevations, so your X, Y, your Z, but also the thickness. So they've got the center line reference points in all of the views, making it easy to dimension. And before I jump into the MVP for the other Scott, I did want to jump back to it and talk about a couple things. So this isn't sloping walls in any way, shape, or form. I did want to start talking a little bit about that. So if you have a sloping wall set up inside of here with reinforcement, there's a couple things to know about sloping walls. And as Scott said, this is version 1, what we're getting into. The second I change this wall from vertical to slanted, if you're using the analysis, it just gets rid of it. You cannot do analysis on slanted walls. Even if the wall is still vertical, you can't do analysis on it. So it disables the analytical model, not only from the wall, but on the footing associated to that wall as well. So you'll notice the enable analytical gets grayed out, and that's not even because the wall's slanted, it's just because the wall's definition has been set to slanted. The one thing about this, if you are getting into this, and I'm going to go, all the changes be a little bit more drastic, a 5-degree angle. If I do slant that wall, you're going to notice some of the reinforcement goes, but not all of it. So if you're using area reinforcement, that area reinforcement will automatically pivot and rotate with it, which is great. But if you were just placing reinforcement sets over individual bars, those aren't understanding that they're going out of it. And the more concerning part to me is they're also not even flagging it as a warning that the element is outside of its host. There's a little bit of workarounds, like Scott said. We do have this in version 1, but there's some limitations in what we're going to start seeing coming up inside of there. And then not structurally related, I actually meant to start off with this. The question would come up if you have a tag. I just got to figure out which file I did that in. Don't tell me I actually closed it. Yeah. So if you had a tag with a leader, what happens? The leader does stay this way. So this was one thing, but I wasn't sure how they had it done because I was playing with this in beta and I never played with it in the finalization. That if you do see the tag is now going to be rotate with component, you're going to see that the horizontal vertical option goes away. So it will always be rotated with the component. As Scott said, the kind of nice part about it is if I do rotate my object, I rotate with it. We no longer have the capability to possibly have a leader with that tag being horizontal. That tag is going to be coming in and just being saying, hey, my tag is still going to be rotated with it until you adjust the elbow. So it's a really bizarre feature that when you first do it, I'm going to undo that. You're like, oh, great, it's rotated. That's not what I wanted. But the second you adjust the elbow, it then says, oh, you probably wanted that tag to be going straight, not be rotated. So we still don't have the horizontal vertical option, so just do understand that you might end up, if you needed sometimes that tag to be vertical and horizontal, you guys might need to have 2 separate tags. One rotates with component and one that doesn't. All right, busted through that, so I think we're going to go ahead and push this out to Scott and let him jump into the MEP unless there's some questions that came up.
There was one question earlier that came up just real quickly. I was reading through that was asking if the new realistic view uses video card, and in particular, I'm guessing that's asking about is it using GPU, and it is. So the new realistic view is actually taking into account the GPU performance of your video card. Again, I'm working on a Surface Book 2, Microsoft Surface Book 2. The primary processor is an NVIDIA M2000. Decent card. It's not a super high-end GPU card, but it seems to work well for what I've done in it so far. I am getting a new computer here shortly that's got an even better video card in it, and we'll see how much better the performance is.
Does it have to be a supported video card?
We let all the manufacturers basically certify their own cards now against what we're doing. So the list that you might see in the supported video cards is by each individual manufacturer. It doesn't have to be on one of those on that list, because if they haven't submitted their criteria to get on the approved list, then we don't know. But so it does not have to be something that's on the list.
Yeah, as Scott said, we'll see if mine, it's funny to me, all the sample projects now, all the 3D views are pretty much in realistic. So I did notice that even in the structural sample file, they did go into realistic modes with most of the camera views. But you can kind of see, as Scott said, if I just come in here and click the little fly through, I don't know how smooth it is for you guys there, but I've done this on some of the larger projects that my clients are working on, and it goes pretty dang smooth to go through. And the other thing I don't know if Scott actually mentioned is you can use the arrow keys to just walk through, so it's not like the old crappy walk tool. You can use the arrow keys while still using the mouse to get this set up. You can also use WASD, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but we don't have like a gravity feature like we have in Navisworks.
No gravity yet, and no physical properties. So you walk right through walls, furniture, everything else. If you're using the walk tools and you actually point your head up, because in our new fly mode, you're literally flying. So now if you hit W and go forward or that key, you literally will go up, right? And then you can use Q and E to elevate or straight up and down, but depending on where you look and where you walk is where you're going to go. So if you come over to a stairway, it's not going to automatically go up the stairs. You just kind of point your head up a little bit, kind of like you would if you were going up the stairs normally. If you get yourself a little too high, then you can E down. I think E is down elevator to get you down a little bit, or Q to get them backwards all the time. But yeah. But way better than using the old steering wheel tool and having to point and click and push forward and pull back. It's much more gaming style. except that there's no fire key, right? There's no, you don't need the space bar to shoot anything. So
there's no time or crouch either, but
Well, it's clearly not an Inkscape killer, so, or at least yet, right?
But you're in product and you're able to do design explorations without having to go out to another product and have something sitting on a second monitor. You can just do it right in your session. So to me, it's much more usable.
Can't walk upstairs.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You can fly upstairs, but yeah, we're close. When I navigated around, I went up and downstairs without having to have gravity, without any issue whatsoever. I mean, you figure out how to do it. It would be a great tool to have some gravity, meaning have solid surfaces to stand on, but it's not at this point, when you get used to doing it, it's really not a killer to the tool. You'll get used to walking around.
I hear the workaround. I hear the rationalization. I get it.
So, all right, let's get over to Scott because it's getting late his time. I saw Scott Buchanan was like maybe talking to his family, his wife saying, "I'm almost done" at some point there a minute ago. So,
it's only 8:08.
All right, Shoba, can we make him presenter? All right, we're trying to get Scott to switch over to being presenter mode so he can go live and then share your screen. And we can talk some MEP. There's been several things coming up in the chat. What about electrical? What about electrical? It's coming.
And just
all right, we're on the wrong screen again. Yeah, you're on you're on presenter mode on our view.
So this button was. And how do I get to pick screens, Scott? I remembered 2 hours ago when we started, but
when you when you go up there, you can go up to the pull down at the top of presenter views on the wrong one. There's a pull down at the top that allows you to swap them back and forth.
Or what about on the go to? Like, how can I change it to my other screen?
I'm not the go-to guru. I'm not sure.
Okay, I think I found it. There we go. Hold on.
Yeah, show screen. You could select the monitor you want.
There we go, and then
there we go.
Got
All
it?
right, we see your MEP title slide. Perfect.
All right.
Technical difficulties, but we're good to go. And your audio is really good, Brian. Your audio was a little bit echoey, muffly, but I think we heard it for the most part.
All right, so MEP, and just as a reminder, my name is Scott Buchanan with Autodesk. It's been a while since someone said that.
Since introductions, it's been quite a while. I talked way too much.
Since intros there. I did get about 8 or 9 LinkedIn notifications I got to accept during it all. But
nice.
To kind of kick things off, there was an electrical focus in 2020. A big addition was feed-through lugs, started to open the door for what we can do. And just to talk future for a moment, this is public knowledge, public roadmap type stuff. We do have a heavy focus on electrical in these in our roadmap in these next coming releases, and not necessarily doesn't have to be a full release. We're notorious for our dot releases, so we do have a focus there kind of moving forward. One of the biggest things that needed to be done, and this needed to be done for quite some time, unless we have some people from overseas, UK, France, there was some adjustments made. Basically, we're calling it globalization, right? So everything was kind of US based or imperial based as far as how we called out circuits, how we called out different types of labeling and nomenclature. So kind of a revamp in that area. And so some of these changes exactly aren't going to be applicable. And some of the features will only show up if you're starting from one of those templates. So if you use your out of the box template, if you use one of the out-of-the-box Imperial templates, it's not going to come with any of these settings, like that circuit naming choice over there. That's a pull down on a family. It's also a setting that can be pre-built inside of a project template. So from a US standpoint, not really hitting anything in that regard. But to kind of bring things back to the US, there was an addition for single phase line to neutral panels being included. So getting a little bit better with calculation abilities. And with that, being able to feed through, like I talked about in the 2020 release. Sorry, I had to throw a water bottle at my dog. The feed through lugs in 2020 and then 21 again, we never could do just a true single phase 120 panel. Start to think about sub-fed panels and, you know, branching off a 3-phase panel, starting to open up some doors for some more complete connected systems, right? And, you know, that's starting at kind of a level that's propagating and getting closer and closer down to devices. So if I start to just speculate, I'm hoping we start to see more of that from a, you know, control standpoint as well. In regards to those single phase panels, there needed to be some graphic changes that took place as well. So if I'm showing a single phase panel crosshair, I don't want to see, you know, B and C in there as well, as far as that goes. So those are being able to be filtered out of our panel schedule templates now. So those will be hidden if that phase is not in use. And then, you know, the traditional checking, if, you know, if we're hooking up a distribution system, if it's not valid, it's going to disconnect, or it's not going to be a choice in that distribution system pull down once it's built out. So you'll get a new option for that 120 line to neutral being incorporated. Switchboards, got an entire dedicated slide here, but really kind of what changed in this regard was a parameter name change. So in 2020 and older, there was max number of 1-pole breakers, because essentially the switchboard was a panel as far as how Revit kind of thought about it. And so with the part type now in an electrical equipment family, if you change that to a switchboard, it will get rid of that max number of 1-pole breakers, and it's going to add in the max number of circuits as far as a parameter goes there. So just kind of cleaning up that a little bit, so making it a little bit more logical, not only from a connection standpoint, but also just how it's calling things out in there as well. A new button was added into our panel schedule area. So again, if I'm going in and setting up 1-pole, 2-pole circuits, it always went to phase A when you were hooked up to a switchboard. So you weren't able to go in there and actually dictate what phase that was connected to. But now, similar to moving a load to a different circuit, we can go in there and we can switch what that phase is actually on. So if it's on A, we can switch it over to B, and so on. So again, a little bit more control as far as kind of that switchboard methodology there. And then also in previous versions, you know, if we put spares or spaces in there, we could always put a rating on that. We could put, you know, a dummy load in there if we were wanting to fake some existing loads and rename the circuit description, but we couldn't change the number of poles or the frame size on a spare space. But now we've got the ability to do that as well. And this is more of a housekeeping type feature. You know, every view that we would look at in the sheets, or I'm sorry, if any sheet that we would look at in the project browser, if you would expand out that sheet, it would have, you know, lighting plan, level 1 or first floor mechanical plan. It would have those views defined underneath those sheets. But when you went to a sheet, it wouldn't tell you what panel schedules were on that sheet. So now you're just going to have that plus sign just like you do for a typical sheet. And once you expand that out, it's going to show you each of those panels. That way you can jump to it from within that sheet view and get to it quickly, as opposed to opening the sheet, seeing what panels are on that sheet, and jumping back. And if you've never worked on a large commercial project or a large project, you know, we could have 30 or 40 panels in there, and it just gets difficult to navigate. So again, more some housekeeping from the project browser standpoint there. And this one is probably the biggest out of anything that was released from an MEP standpoint. I hate to say that for electrical, I hate to say that for mechanical, but this was a problem that really destroyed lots of people's days. And, you know, when we were working on a pipe run, a duct run, this would happen on a conduit run or cable tray if you were modeling those as well. But when we were collaborating on projects, you know, once someone picked on a single segment, it essentially grabbed that entire run and tried to check all of those elements out. So then, you know, if I was only moving, for example, in that middle screen there, if I was only moving that diffuser close to the main there, if I was sliding that over, it's going to check out all of that going down through there. And so once I relinquished all of it, If someone else was working on one of the other elements, we would get into this whole circular reference thing, or sometimes people would open up projects and it would tell them those elements are checked out. So it was just this vicious cycle that we would get stuck into sometimes. And so now with the behavior, it kind of behaves like what you see on the screen, right? So if you clicked on, that branch is the only thing that's getting checked out. So the reconciling of the objects, the elements is much better now. One change you will notice because of this is that if you've got a valve in a pipe run, in the past, if you would delete that valve, it would clean up that connection for you, as long as the valve family was built properly. So it would clean up that pipe run in there. That will no longer happen. So if you delete an inline accessory, so pipe accessory, duct accessory, it's going to leave that gap right there. And then you just have to grip edit those pieces together. And that kind of boiled back down to when you would do that, it would redraw that entire run. So again, from a work sharing standpoint, it was doing some things behind the scenes that was checking out more than what it really needed to. And at this point in time, we just had to disable that particular feature. Maybe it'll come back, but just for now, if you delete that, it's going to leave that gap in there for you. And with 2021, P&ID Modeler. So this is not a new feature to Revit. P&ID Modeler, I think, got added in 2018 or so. For those unfamiliar with it, if you were working in a plant 3D project, they have smart P&IDs. If you lay those out, and that is a collaboration project for plant, what has changed for 21 is that we can now access those through the BIM 360 Docs Next Gen platform, right? So last week, March 25th, collaboration for Plant 3D was released and made that available. So now we've got that same compatibility on the Revit side of things as well. So if I've got any of those objects modeled from a schematic standpoint, then I can leverage some of that data and pull it across and use it inside of Revit as well. It does not solve the missing feature schematics in Revit, no. So we do not have one-line schematics. We don't have single-line diagrams from a tool standpoint. That's still drafting lines, 2D symbol families, detail items, and building those out. That is on our public roadmap, talking about building schematics, but again, no timeline as far as when something like that would happen. And I've ran into a lot of people that this was new for, so I did want to show kind of that P&ID modeler in action. Now this is a Plant 3D project, so a smart P&ID has been created inside of here. So the equipment has a tag value, the line has some data associated, and the valves have some tags to it as well. And with our release, pull this over, there we go. With our release last week, we made Plant 3D available inside of BIM 360. So this is just showing that same thing is being opened there. All data retains, all the fancy, wonderful feature of BIM 360, can be applied to that as well. And then what that does downstream in a Revit environment is that project, again, has to be shared to BIM 360, and then you're going to have a P&ID modeler tool here. Now, this did work in older versions, but it was through BIM 360 Teams. So if Plant 3D was shared in a BIM 360 Teams project, then you could gain access to it and do it that way. So I'm essentially opening up a collab project, and it would show me any P&ID drawings that have been created in there. So in this particular one, I just had a P&ID P-01, and if I had multiple lines going down through there, it would show me, like I numbered that one 1001, just a schematic line number. So I would see all those lines, I'd be able to come across, and then it's going to show me what is actually in that run that I've got. Now, if I go to try to place this, it tells me, hey, you've got to map these. So, how in the world does Revit know what to come in for that particular pipe or that valve, et cetera? Inside of, and you can do this in your actual, project template, your setups and all of that. Got mad because I hit cancel on the save again. There we go. So it's going to look for mapping, and the mapping is going to actually define what does everything equal. And again, these are all things that can be set up ahead of time. It's looking at a list of P&ID services. In the Revit world, those are systems. So that line that I modeled, it was a cooling water supply line. So I'd have to map it to a Revit system that's been built in this project. Now, I didn't have one built in here, so I'm just mapping it to chilled water supply. And then same thing from an object standpoint, this is what the P&ID object is referred to as. So it's a primary line segment, and you get to tell it that it's a particular Revit pipe type. So if I had my, my welded pipe type set up, if I had a flange pipe type and all those configured, I could choose those out of the list. I'm just going with standard. And then same thing with pipe accessories. Now, what it does is it tries to like scan inside of your project to see if you have any of these Revit families loaded that match or have some of the same names inside of it. So on the left, I didn't do anything here. It just found that there was a ball valve in the project. Now, if I had 6 different ball valves or 6 different check valves, I'd have to come in and choose which one it was, right? So it automatically picked those to say it. And I'll show you where, it comes in, gets that as well. And you can do it and break it down to fittings and all that type of stuff as well. And if you want to map equipment, now, typically you're already going to have the equipment model that being placed in there, but it's got the same workflow, right? So if I wanted to come in and say, hey, the horizontal centrifugal pumps from the P&ID world equals this centrifugal pump family. Again, you can take it that far if you want to. And then there's a property mapping. And what it's looking at is the tag data on the equipment and the tag data on the pipe accessories. These have to be shared parameters. And I just created one called equipment tag. And then I created a shared parameter called valve tag as well. So that data that's in that P&ID symbol can port over to go that way. So once those are set, now I could come over and you can see even the preview for the P&ID, and that's interactive. You can pan zoom because obviously that could be a really big P&ID that you need to pan around on that sheet. So if I want to choose that pipe, so now when I click on it, it's not going to yell at me anymore. It's going to automatically choose that pipe type. So if I look in my properties, I mapped it to standard, diameter, it went to 6 inch. So it knew that it was that 6 inch pipe and started to draw with it. Now, I'm in a terrible view to draw that going vertical, so I'll restart that. But as I choose that, again, it's grabbing that data, and that's the only thing it's getting. It's getting that size information, it's getting that pipe type to draw with, and then it's gonna let me draw. Now, I'm not gonna map that entirely, but just to show that it does come across. And in that list, it's showing me that it's green because I've satisfied the placement of that, right? So it's saying you've placed that 6 inch line in there. So it's kind of a validation that you get to do. Same thing here. If I went to the check valve, once I choose on it, click it, it's going to load up that actual family as well. It found the size. Don't care where I'm dropping this stuff right now, just getting it in. And then I'll bounce over and just show that data. I'm not going to place all these components, but to kind of show you what that really did for me. Valve tag CV001. So it just matched that data coming across. There's not a bi-directional connection or anything like that. It really is just kind of a one-way data push. And that's actually true in Plant 3D as well, because it has the same functionality with its model-based objects. So you've got that as well. Now, I did mention you can place the equipment if you want. So it's saying, hey, from pump 001. So I could have triggered that. But again, if I'm in Revit, I've already laid out my equipment. That's one of the first things I'm doing. But you can see it will map to it as well.
It's Scott, you see the question down at the bottom of the questions?
Let's see, let me go.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was asking Scott Davis. I should have said Scott Davis. So but it basically is asking, wow, it sounds like one of my snarky questions. Is the construction phasing fixed? Did you?
I've never been able to see the question and answer panel in this go-to meeting at all. I can see when people answer them, and so I'm not sure what's going on.
Got it. Well, yeah, there's just a mention of is the construction phasing fixed for electrical?
It's a construction. Elaborate on construction phasing. Like, are we talking actual phasing on?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no more clarification from Adrian, so we can consider that a comment.
Yeah, throw that back on. And I think Adrian connected with me on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn too, and can follow up with you as well.
There you go.
Because I saw he was electrical. I was looking at everybody's titles, and I remembered Adrian was electrical. And I saw electrical. So, but yeah, you can expand upon that, whether it's true phasing of objects like Revit phasing.
He says it disconnects the conduit.
Yes, it will do that. The phasing is yes. Phasing is still as it was yesterday in that regard.
Keep banging on them out there, Adrian. Keep emailing them. Everybody at Autodesk, they'll get to it.
Yep, it'll be on there. It's on that list somewhere. And then it kind of goes on globalization for just a second here again, but from a mechanical standpoint. But if you're having to do cubic feet per minute or hour, it's just added some units inside of there. So not extremely huge, but from a US standpoint. But if you are doing metric jobs or doing jobs in Canada and it's a metric project, there you go. And then from a fabrication standpoint, so this is also one of my specialties as well. I do all the MEP fab stuff. Check out my Fab Friday posts every Friday on LinkedIn. So here's a fabrication extension integration. So if you've downloaded this through the desktop app, that's what we've always had to do, and it would install a ribbon tab, and it would have the import export fabrication job files. It'd have the fab reports and then the data export on there. Once you install that extension, so you still have to install the extension. It's just going to go into a more logical location now, right? So instead of being bundled in the add-ins tab, you can see exporting a fab job file, which is an MAJ file. It's in the export area, and then on the context menu, on the context menu, so if you select on a piece of duct or pipe, or if you go to the insert ribbon tab, you're going to see you've got the import MAJ file option to go there as well. So again, you still have to download it. I actually had to get clarification on that. I thought maybe these installed like some of the structural ones, did that Brian mentioned, but we will still have to download those. And this is just kind of piggybacking off the 2020.1. We don't have any new features exactly related to this. There were a couple parameter name changes for some of the analytical data, like something was thermal mass and mass was lowercase, or wasn't title case. We made it title case. So a couple properties were added that are going to be for future, basically buckets of information, and they'll say not available inside of them once you run those types of reports. But again, this is just the 2020.1 officially being in Revit and rolled out. So doing the actual, Energy Plus modeling, Open Studio adjustments, building custom workflows and integrations for that as well, and also system sizing and selection as well. So something that's never been available from an equipment standpoint. It's never been available inside of Revit. We could do load calculations we could do them to an extent on nice square buildings, 90-degree angles, perfectly vertical walls and stuff like that, but complex geometry that internal load engine would struggle with. But now things are being extremely revamped and extremely transparent as far as how it's gathering that information and leveraging it as well. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Davis, and I'll check if there's any chat questions.
Sounds good. Shobit, go ahead and throw me back up as presenter real quick. And we can wrap up. We did, an hour and a half so far, so pretty good considering all things. I did chat quite a bit, and Brian, you did a great job of keeping it short. And Scott, you did too. I tend to over talk about some of these things, but anyway, what we're looking at now. Make sure you guys can see my screen again. I'm screen sharing. Got the features list.
Yes, we can see it.
No. All right, good. So this is the one I had buzzed out or blurred in the beginning. This is pretty much all the stuff that we talked about today. all detailed out for you, from everything on the platform side, from PDF linking all the way to that get Autodesk content, architecture side, generative design, slanted walls, etc. Great new tools around rebar and some of the structural steel detailing stuff. MEP, lots of new tools there for electrical, some fabrication stuff. So I think lots of great enhancements. Now, this isn't the complete list, right? This is things that were noted, that were put in. There's lots of small features and functionality. I actually saw on the some of the blogs today, some of the people that are blogging about the new release have picked up on some of the littler things. Our help, what's new in our help should have a lot of those littler things as well. And also remember that this is while a lot of these tools are built over the course of the year, we've also had 2020.1, 0.2, and I think only went to 0.2 this year. It all had new features included with them as well. This isn't the old days where those quote unquote service packs were just bug fixes. All those point releases now come with new feature functionality as well. And we will have 2021.1 and 0.2, and I'm guessing hopefully 0.3. We like to try to do at least 4 releases a year, the major, and then 3 more point releases. And those will all come with new stuff in them as well. And hopefully we'll start seeing the effects of actually getting some new developers on board on the architecture side and doing some more work there. Lots of exciting stuff to go. We know we've got some more work to do on some of the tools. We wanted to get them out. Realistic's one of them. I think there's a lot of really cool things we could do there as far as making that even better than it is today. Slanted walls, right? We got a little bit of work to do. But with that, again, I want to thank all my presenters. We had Brian, we had Scott. David jumped on late because of confusion. David joined Autodesk just this past March. So he's new to our team, but many of you guys know him from industry already. Was working for WeWork, has a long history with architecture and construction companies. So many of you guys know David from the past. But thanks to all my presenters for jumping in. Jay, thanks to you guys and Shobit and the Titan guys for hosting this tonight and getting us all online and doing all the prep work of GoToMeeting and things like that. And with that, we'll turn it back over to you, Jay, for final thoughts. Oh, you're muted. Jay's muted.
I am the fucking king of sound on this meeting. The first 6 minutes, I just was a debacle. I will edit that out for the recorded session. Oh my God. Anybody that's still on that was there at the beginning, holy crap, I'm sorry. But thank you guys very much. It was really awesome. You know, spending the time, taking that out of your life, even in these crazy times where we're kind of, sequestered, it really is something that touches us to have you do this and provide this kind of support for us. Really, thank you. And I'll get with you, Scott, to get some download materials. We'll put it in the, all over the blogosphere and in the comments of the video when it's recorded and posted in a couple days. And we look forward to next year.
Sounds
David,
great. I noticed at one point we had like over 70 attendees at one point, Jay. I'm not sure what the max, I didn't see the max count. I'm not sure if you guys ever got the max, but we had a bunch of people online. So
yeah, I think we maxed over 100 and we were ranging about 90 for most of it. We went down to 61, back up to 70. It's awesome.
Very
I think
good.
the last time I presented with you guys was in 2010, so it's nice to be back.
Good to have you back, my friend.
And if anybody has
any other,
if anybody has any questions about like rendering and stuff like that, what I was trying to bring up on the point with the filters is that you can actually now animate the transition of the filter into the view, so that if you wanted to create some special effect for a presentation, it makes it so you can do some really cool things, whether you're working with concrete or whether you're working with architecture or electrical, like creating transparencies or creating phase changes into those filters. So it's just another way that you can really do.
I have an idea, David.
Yeah.
I don't know a time frame right now, but why don't you do a presentation? Record it.
Okay, yeah, we'll put something together. I understand max headroom.
Think about it, present live, do it live. Fire up Revit, do it live.
Was there any other
awesome.
questions that came into the panel that we need to address live?
BIM 360 question. Is there any documentation about BIM 360 meeting DFARS clause and FedRAMP requirements?
So all the information about what. Okay, so all the questions about BIM 360 and our cloud security can all be found on the Autodesk Trust Center. So go to trust.autodesk.com, and we detail out down to the individual product. We detail out BIM 360 docs, BIM 360 design, BIM 360 build, and tell what the different ISO certifications and the SOC 2 compliancy that's there. FedRAMP is something that we were working towards at one point, and I don't know where that currently stands today with the BIM 360 platform, but that Trust Center that I just told you should give you the details that you need to understand which of the different protocols that we adhere to in our cloud for safety and security of data. And then if there needs to be a further discussion about any of those things, it's definitely something that our technical team can get lined up and have somebody from the safety and security team even talk with your firms as well.
And BIM 360 just released a new release recently, so you should definitely check out the new releases there because there's a lot of stuff that was just released that are going to be very impactful to many of you.
Yep.
Yeah. And the final one, question on generative, it said at AU, it was brought up that any custom script upload would have a cost to run associated. Does this feature run on the computer or in the cloud? Is it open-ended or a couple features currently?
It does use cloud credits.
Yeah, I didn't catch David, did you catch that question? I didn't catch the beginning. What were we referring to? Something that uses cloud credits, but I didn't hear the beginning.
The generative design elements, does it, it has a cost. We just learned, right, cloud credits. But the next questions are, does this feature run on the computer or in the cloud? And then I'm not sure I get this, but is it open-ended or a couple features currently? I think you showed it was a handful of features right now. But
a handful of features that come. Sorry, Jay, the digital delays get me. There's a handful of features, studies that you can run that come out of the box, and then obviously we're encouraging those that want to do their own. You can create your own Dynamo graphs and make your own studies, and then obviously with Dynamo being open source, I think there's the idea that there could be a community of available studies out there that others could then use. Go to GitHub and get my solar analysis study. I don't know, I'm making something up, but anyway, grab those things from that kind of community. The cloud credits, I believe, because it basically it is running in the cloud. Those results are using Amazon's EC2 to calculate and compute, and that's what we use is Amazon EC2. So there's a cloud credit associated with some of those. It's actually using Forge in the background to run some of that stuff for you. Now, the ones that come out of the box don't require any cloud credits, right? And I don't know where the monetization comes in, and I don't have any of the overall values of like how many cloud credits does it take for a particular study. But those are things that we could probably get for you guys, and you can send those out to the group afterwards.
25 for a study. When you press the generate button, it says 25.
Okay.
And then an outcome to an SAT or STL file is $100 for an outcome. But that's just on Cloud Credits FAQ. So find all that details.
All right. Yeah, we can get the details specifically around generative for you. Karen earlier asked a question about where generative was located. Is there a download? She actually asked for refinery beta. So I don't know if the old beta is still available any longer. It's all generative design, and it's something that will come into your desktop application. So when you go log in, you go to the desktop app and tells you the other available tools that might be available. When you have Revit installed, you're going to see that one of those other available tools is the generative design tool, and you can click on it from there and install it from there.
Right on. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Everybody out there, all the attendees, thank you for showing up. And we'll see you next month. And it's going to be a good one.
See you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.
See ya.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.